and welcome to this month's episode of Mapping It Out. My name is Guy and I will be your journey master, taking you through and behind the scenes of everything that goes into DEIOS. We've had some bad news, but we've got some good news for you as well. Our world continues to change and evolve with this whole COVID thing. Some doors are opening, some are staying closed, and the impact can't yet be fully calculated, I don't think. So we got bad news 2 weeks ago that the alpha was going to be delayed, and Till's going to be joining us today or tonight or this morning or yesterday. I don't know what time zone you're in, but he's going to be joining us at some point to talk about this, as well as the extraordinary lengths that the team has gone to try and mitigate this moving forward and to up their game, if you will. That's not to say that their game is low already. It's just they feel really bad and we want to drive it forward. So they're going to try and make up for lost time in the pandemic. We're going to be talking about that today. We're also going to be talking about, we're going to be showing you, I think that's the better word. We're going to be showing you what has been done in the meantime whilst the team has been working. And it's really, really exciting. Till's just shown me the demo, as a matter of fact. And I have to say, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say anything. And then we look at some new milestones for Dungeon Fog and the launch of templates and all that kind of cool stuff. And we talk about what's happening this weekend. So there's a lot to get through. Now, we have devoted a large section of today's show to your questions and answers. So if you have a question, please put the word question in caps in front of your question on Twitch or on YouTube. I'll be bouncing around and we can go and answer those specifically for you today. So don't hold back. Ask your questions, please, please, please. So let's get the man in himself. Let's bring Till in. Till, hello and welcome to, and thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me, as always.
Yeah, all right. So, Till, the deadline was missed, and you outlined the reasons for it in a very eloquent update, which you sent out to all Kickstarters. But some people watching might not necessarily be Kickstarters. They might just be fans and enthusiasts. So we're going to be devoting a lot of today's show to answering questions that people might have with regards to the delay and ramifications therein. So what's the plan moving forward? Or just take us through very briefly what happened.
Okay. So first of all, I'm sorry. It was to a big extent my fault, because when we realized that COVID is happening, I was still convinced that we could make it through the pandemic lockdown that Austria hit without major effect on our development time. And I was so eager to give you something that I didn't listen to Andy, and I didn't really listen to Bodhi, and I overruled them. And I said, nope, let's make it public. The 25th of May is going to be our deadline, and we can harvest that, let's call that date pressure, to make it happen. And then, well, we realized that the lockdown is a problem in development. It is affecting us as people at home. We cannot work full time. We have to dedicate a lot of time to our families. There were quite weird incidents where at one point one of our developers PC broke, and you couldn't go to a store to buy a new one. You had to order one on the internet, which is not sending out PCs quite as fast as usual. So there was a lot of stuff going on that I didn't anticipate, and I was clinging to that idea probably too long. We could have made an announcement later, but I was still hoping that we could catch up. And by the time we realized that it's just not going to be in a quality that we're proud of, I had to bite into the sour fruit and say, okay, no, we're not going to make it on the 25th. That's impossible. And again, I think we all know software companies or game development companies who release products just because the date is hit. And then the ramifications of that are most of the times not good. So we want to show you an Alpha 1 that is a promising tool to what it can become, and not something that gets burnt down to the ground with the first alpha release. And with that said, my lesson learned is I will not announce dates before it is in testing, and which means we are already in testing. We're just bug fixing the last things, and we know for sure that we will not need more than 2 weeks or 4 weeks to finish the bug fixing. So whenever you're going to ask me in the future, when is going to come something out, I will refer to the line when it's finished. And I know that's harsh, but I think that's the only way to not be someone who always promises dates that can't be met. Also, I would like to point out that it is just one date now. Once we are in alpha, we will release constant updates. So alpha 2 most likely is not going to be something that we're going to say alpha 2 will be coming in fall, but at one specific point, we will meet enough points to tick off that we have now automatically entered alpha 2 stage, because we have so many features implemented that we are now able to call this alpha 2. So it's now that is bugging me. And trust me, I'm really unhappy with the situation, mainly because I promised something that I couldn't keep up with. But yeah, that's where we are. And now we're doing our best to move forward and finish this thing so you can put your hands on it.
Well, there we go. And I think that when we look at the responses from Kickstarter, everyone realised that these things happen. And I don't think anybody could have anticipated what the actual ramifications of this lockdown was going to be. And I heard a joke, I think. It's very popular to say, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? It is comforting to know that absolutely everybody in 2015 got it wrong. No one could have anticipated that we would all be sitting in our little apartments or in our homes stuck behind this isolation. So I think, all right, so what is the plan moving forward?
Okay, so the first thing was that because of the delayed alpha, we ran in the situation that one of our developers had to leave. He said he could stay until alpha 1 or until the end of May. And now we are past end of May, and Jan, who joined us in fall last year, has left the company. So what we did was Andy and I spent some time looking for replacements they've already signed the contract, they're already there, and they are onboarding right now. So this week, next week, we are onboarding 2 new developers to replace Jan. The other things happening is, well, I will show you what we did when we are right now. And I will talk about the next steps while I show you what we have. I think that will be the best approach.
Okay. Now, just before we get there, by taking on 2 people, that doesn't mean that it happens twice as fast. I mean, we don't now cut the deadline by a year or something. I mean, that's not how...
Well, if you like, honestly, if you would ask me, I would say, yes, that's exactly what it means. But Andy always brings up the story of the CEO who says, well, I need a child. And someone says, well, here's a mother waiting 9 months. And then he says, well, then let's hire 9 mothers and I can have the child in 1 month. And that's not how it works. It does mean, however, that we are still, I mean, it's going to be a bit of both. We're going to have more hands-on development, but it also means more overhead on planning. And I think we will speed up to some extent, but we will also be slower in other parts where planning just takes longer. But the hopes would be that we have 2 developers instead of 1 developer who helps Andy to build 2 tools simultaneously instead of 1 tool simultaneously.
What's the mood like in the office? Oh, well, because Austria's now gone back to offices, or are you guys still working?
Yes, no, we're back to offices. Austria has opened up, I think, around the 16th. So in the weeks between the 16th and now, it was a transition back to the office, because the problem is that the offices are allowed to open up, but schools haven't been opening up. Or kindergarten was still closed. So whoever was capable could come to the office, and whoever had to first find a solution took the weeks to make that happen. But now the office is fully filled with people again. Everyone's back here at the office. It's still like you still need to wear masks in public transport, and you still have to wash your hands all the time, and we have sanitizers standing all over the place. But mostly I would say we're back to normal.
Is there a way that we can show support for the team? Like, is there something that we can do?
Well,
just to say,
if you would like to. So everyone's down, obviously, that we didn't meet the deadline. And Andy, who is now in the process between onboarding 2 new developers and trying to pick up what Jan left unfinished, is now really stressed at the moment. So if you want to show some support, go to our Discord and tag Andy and say, just, I love you, keep up the work. I'm pretty sure that we'll make him happy. Well, I'm pretty sure that he will be pissed at me because now he's getting pinged all the time, but in his heart, he will be very touched. So if you want to do something for Andy, if you want to do something for Jonas, Bodhi, tag them and just send them some love through Discord. I think that will make them very happy.
Absolutely. I think that definitely is a thing to do. We're going to go and bombard them and say we love you. There. I like it. So Till, with the new developers coming in, the team is quite big now. There's 11 people, maybe
12. I think.
Is it 12?
I think it's 12. Well, okay. Yeah, we can count them. I think it's 12. The last time I counted, I think so. It's either 11 or 12.
Okay.
Well,
we've got an organogram chart thing to explain it, because I was saying, I don't know who works for what and in where, and right. I know that So let's have a look at that quickly. You've got a slide here. Not that one. That one. This is the company's setup. Now I just want to make sure that they can still hear you. Yes, they can. Okay. Will you take us through it?
Yes. Okay. So this is the company setup, and if you count, let me just quickly count. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. No, it's 11. I counted Kiora as an artist for DEIOS, and that's why I made 12. So it's 11 people, and as you can see, Jan, who was part of the development team, left this month. So we have been now looking for replacement, and we found 2 very capable developers. We found Nikita, who is a former AAA game developer. He just finished Saints Row 3 Remastered as lead developer there. And he's very experienced with C++ and Rust development. He's working on graphic engines. So I think he's a really good fit. He's also very, very excited to join the team. He has played around with Dungeon Fog already, and he's getting in the moods for it. He's going to join with Ilya together on Monday next week. So Ilya is a Rust developer who has, and that is quite rare at the moment, who has professional experience with Rust development, because Rust is a quite young software language, and there are not many companies out there where you can already work with professional Rust background. So he already has that. He has been a speaker on international conferences about WebAssembly and Rust. He joined the team with a lot of enthusiasm, because he is a big fan of Baldur's Gate. He's a big fan of RPGs. And he was like, yes, I can do map making. That's really cool. So that's Nikita and Ilya, and they're both now in the team, and they are enforcing us with additional programmers power. I think it's still rather confusing if you look at that chart, who's doing what in this company. So you will see it's really intertwined, but I did my best to explain it a little bit. So there's a center row, which are the founders, obviously. So this is me, Andy, Thomas, and Herbert, who founded the company, who started working on Dungeon Fog as the core battle map software. And then we've expanded the team. Oh, right, that's the next slide. Sorry. No. I kept forgetting what slides I built. Right, so if you look at that, you see that we have the office in Vienna. That's the dark gray area where Tony, our artist, is part-time in our office, part-time working as a contractor. Then we have all the international contractors who are supporting and working for us on a contract basis. And obviously we have the partner companies, which is Keora, you, and Well Anvil. Right, so I think the next slide now shows who's currently working on the battle maps. So just to remind you, Dungeon Fog is the name of the company, and the battle map editor is the thing that you are using when you're building battle maps. So working on the battle maps right now is everyone you see highlighted here. Then we have, if you go to the next slide, that's everyone who's working on the website and the services, which could be social media, payment services, Discord, support, all that stuff. And then apparently we have the DEIOS team. So those people are all working on DEIOS. And as you can see, Nikita and Ilya joined this team specifically to develop and work on DEIOS. And if you bring all of that together, you will see that this is a colorful mix of people trying to do everything at once.
It's very pretty. I mean, it's really pretty. But I mean, what an amazing team to have assembled. And did you ever think that it was going to get this big? I mean, no. When you started? No.
When I started, I keep saying that it's kind of my wife always rolls with her eyes when I start with that. It's like my daughter saying, "Oh, Dad's telling the same story again." But I keep saying that I was sure that either I will end up as the game master with the most expensive tool for himself, or as a hobbyist who's doing that aside from his day life job or his day job, where he's just, well, yeah, we're doing that whenever we have time. I never expected that this would go so big that we are now a company with, 11 people. That's and not counting the partners. So this is really a dream come true.
Well, I think it's absolutely fantastic. And I mean, all of you who support DEIOS and that sort of thing, this is the team that you're supporting. I mean, to think about that as well from an economic perspective is truly phenomenal. Okay, so Till, we've got the bad, we've got the new. Shall we showcase?
Yes, please. I think we both need to click a button, right?
Yeah, so I'm going to go here first to say to you, you can do your shift now, Till. I'm going to say to you, so what Till is now showing is that's it. I'm not going to say anymore. That's just accept it and move on. There we go. Look at that. Isn't that mind-blowing? It's done. Thanks for watching.
Shut up. So what you can see is the current development build. Andy was so kind to export it and compile it today. So I can show you where we are right now. And the first thing you might notice between the last time I showed you something and this time is we now have the dynamic scale implemented, which means we have a grid now. And if you look at the lower screen somewhere here, I'm trying to put my mouse there, you see that we have a dynamic scale that is adjusting. So right now, I'm pretty sure you can't really read it. So right now it says 500 meters. I know we're talking about meters and kilometers here. A miles conversion will come later. Right now, we're sticking to kilometers, just for the sake of our sanity. So what you see here is that you can, by zooming out, you can change the scale, which means now we're at 3 kilometers. If I move further out, we're getting 5 kilometers. And as you can see, I can go out and out. At some point, we will go at 10 kilometers, and I can go even further out. Now we're at 100 kilometers, and I can go even further out. Now we're at 1,000 kilometers. And when you look at the full map, this is Earth, which means what we took for this prototype testing here is 42,000 kilometers, I think, somewhere around that, and by 25,000 kilometers. So that's already a pretty big map. Now, if I go back in there, again, I can zoom wherever I point my mouse. The scaling will zoom there. Right click, I can pan, I can zoom in here. And I think now we're pretty solidly close to 5 kilometers. This is where we are currently. So this is the current build. Andy is at the moment working on finishing the landmasses because the landmass drawing is still rather buggy. All the landmass modifications, you need to select and move and scale and rotate and join and split those landmasses. So that is happening this week and next week. Andy is working on that, and hopefully the 2 new programmers will be able to join in and help him there. What I'm currently working on is the dimensions and the scales of assets, because we need to figure out how do assets work in relation to landmasses. So I'm going to switch my screen now. Let me just, I think that should work. Right. So what we did was I tried to find something that I can use as a reference. And I was looking for something that is almost round, because then I don't have to measure every distance. I can just say, okay, in a diameter, it is 45 kilometers. That's fine. So we took Gran Canaria as something like our measurement prototype from where we started. So now I knew that if I want to show Gran Canaria, it has to be almost 25 kilometers, 45 kilometers, which would be 1, 2, 3, 4, so 5, 10, 15, 20, 24, 25, 30, 35. My math is leaving me 40, so almost. And now we have to understand that we get the assets from Keora, and in what relation do we bring them in? So for that, I will go to this one. So when we look at Gran Canaria, and we know that it is 45 kilometers in diameter, I can then go and say, okay, what is the biggest asset I got from Keora? In our case, it is this mountain. What would that be in relation to real world or to Gran Canaria? And it is 25 kilometers in base length, which equals pretty much Mount Everest. So when we take a mountain, and this is the biggest mountain we've got from Keora, we can say, okay, if this is the biggest mountain, all the other mountains are smaller in relation to this mountain. We need to define what is the biggest mountain on Earth and where can we put it. So if the biggest mountain on Earth would be Mount Everest, with a baseline of 25 kilometers, we can then go and say, okay, all right, now in relation to this island, this would be the biggest mountain, and in relation to this mountain, this would be how big all the other assets would be. The interesting thing, I'm pretty sure everyone noticed already, is we are now bringing together 2 different, let's call them perspectives or approaches, because on the one hand, we are trying to emulate and simulate real world measurement, but on the other hand, we're talking about artists and artwork that should represent a map and not be a geographical detailed map that is exact in measurements. So this tree obviously is around 3 kilometers in width and probably almost 4 kilometers in height. Yes, apparently, but otherwise you would not see trees on your maps because they are a representation of trees and not detailed, true-sized trees. So that is what I'm doing right now with Keora, is I'm balancing all of that. I'm looking at the measurements of all the assets. I'm trying to align them and see if they fit. And I'm doing my best to get all this meta information into our asset manager so we can then upload them and start working on the prop placement. Now, if you want to reverse engineer that, because I think that is very interesting to see. If you look at this map, this is a map that Keora did. It's the region of Farnus. Now, how big is that map? When I bring back my measurements, and sorry, I need to go around my mic here. Again, we have Mount Everest, the biggest asset we have, and I was looking for something that I compare with, which would be Mount Keylor here. So this is 25 kilometers. So if I reverse engineer the map by assuming that this is the same size, which it is, we have a 300 kilometers by 330 kilometers big map here. Sorry, I need to scroll up a little bit here. That's what we have. Right, so taking the mountain, placing it on an existing map from Keora, trying to re-engineer the measurements and learning that this would be in kilometer dimensions, 300 kilometers by 330 kilometers for this snippet of the map. Well, let's go back to DEIOS and find something that is fitting, because here we're talking about 5 kilometers. That's not going to work. So let's zoom out a little bit and see we're now at 100 kilometers. If you look here, it says 100 kilometers is one grid. So let's find probably that one. Nope, that's too small. Let's go up to that one. So if we assume that the region of Farnus would be on this map, it would probably be 330, which means 100, 200, 300. So if we start from the bottom here, it would be 100, 300, 100, 200, 300 by 300. It would be this section of this island. And that's the whole map that you would be building there. So if you want to fill that with details, you would go in until you are probably, I think we are going to be somewhere around 10 kilometers would be, I think, a good default where you could start. And then you could place all the mountains and place all the stuff. And by the end, you would have this detailed map fleshed out. But if you're starting on a world map size, you would technically have this little thing here finished in relation to everything else that you have to do. So my recommendation would be, for stress testing, we will release Earth-sized maps. So for stress testing, Alpha 1 will have Earth-sized measurements as something. But I would recommend not to start too big, because you will end up filling your, picture yourself drawing Earth, all of Earth by hand. You will spend years on that. So yes, that's what the software is where we are right now. And that's where we're heading.
Okay, I hope you guys are as impressed as I was when I saw this. Chat's been very quiet till. I think they're kind of going. Well, that's certainly what I was doing when I saw this thing. So, I have a couple questions here, and remember, chat, if you do have a question, just type the word "question" in front, and we'll try and answer it. So, all right, a couple things. Let's start with the first one. You're zooming in and you're zooming out. I know that in certain parlance, certain terminology, we talk about level of detail, your LOD.
Yes. Yes.
Will that be dynamically scaled? So when
Yes.
I've zoomed into the 10-kilometer base and I've put all my trees in, and then I zoom out, will it clump down to like one tree? Or how is that?
We don't know. Yeah, we don't know exactly how it performs. That is something that we need to test. So level of detail zooming is definitely nothing of Alpha 1 material. This is something for later down the road. But we're looking at two different concepts here right now. One concept would be every biome and every thing that you draw on the landmass has a base color, has a texture that is sitting beneath that. So if you zoom out and we need to reduce the level of detail, we could fall back to just showing the base texture or the base color for that area. So green for forests and let's say gray, brown for mountains, things like that. The other concept would be exactly what you said, to fall back to something where we just place one tree as a reference or a group of trees as a reference for the forest that's there, and one mountain as a reference for the mountain range that is there. Again, I think this is not so much a question of programming, but this is a question of fine-tuning the experience, because it can get complicated if you have a long mountain range. Where do you put that one single mountain? Whereas if we would just show the color, it's fine because you have the mountain range, so we can show the color wherever you've placed the mountain range. The other thing is level of details is definitely going to affect the way that landmasses are drawn, because right now, the jitter, which is the wibbly wobbly line that's created here, is created when you place down the landmass, which means that if I would go now at 500 meters, no one, I think, is ever going to work on that level of zoom factor. But if you would, let's go to a bigger one. If you go to this one, this is and we're looking at 5 kilometers, or we will be looking at, let's say, 10 kilometers now. This is a very boring coastline. So what we definitely need to do is we need to find the right way to apply the jitter and give you the tools in your hands so that you can add more jitter to those areas and then manually refine them by adding and subtracting things to that one, which would create very tiny details that are absolutely unnecessary if you look at this one here from that perspective, from that level of zoom. So we are definitely going to reduce the amount of points the further you zoom out.
Okay, and then I guess I mean these are things that one doesn't really think about until you start to see it in action. Is that something that you're finding as well? It's like, well, we thought about this. Oh, now we're seeing there's a whole new set of questions.
Yes. Especially when it comes to, for example, selecting, deselecting, switching tools, stuff like that. Like, for example, keep in mind that I think I can activate that. Right. Keep in mind that whenever you draw a landmass, we need to understand what are you currently doing. We have, it is already a landmass layer. It's just named terribly right now from programming perspective. But if you draw a landmass, are you drawing it on the same landmass layer or another landmass layer? And what if you would like to draw it on the same landmass or a different landmass? That's a complicated question. So Bodhi introduced those switches where you can say, create a new layer, draw on the same layer, or draw beneath the existing layer. I hope that's what it means. And we're seeing all of those things while we're testing it, when we say, wait. Our tool is not doing what we expected. And Andy says, well, it's doing exactly what you've expected because that's what you taught me I should do. And then we're like, oh, yeah, right. Sorry, that's user interface. We should have thought about that, but we didn't anticipate that problem before we came there. So there's a lot of forward and backward until we get where we want to be.
Right, absolutely. And I suppose the other thing would be text. If you're at 1 kilometer or 10 kilometers and you label everything, and then you zoom out to 1,000 kilometers, all you would see is the text. So it's going to have to reduce.
So one thing that Bodhi introduced, and again, this is a question of tweaking, is cities and labels could remain fixed while you zoom, which means that when I have a city here, I would still see the city icon in its original size with the label next to it, and it would keep the same size even when I start zooming in or zooming out, which would, I think, be a helpful reference, because you could say, okay, I always want to see the city, and I just want to get an understanding where it is. So this might be a checkbox that you get where you say, place a landmark, and then tick off fixed or not fixed to zoom level. Yes.
Absolutely. I think that's interesting. And then we've kind of addressed it as well. The textures, scaling, and that sort of thing. Are we going to see hard edges appearing when we zoom fully out, or how will the feathering happen between the different colors?
Well, we're using soft brushes, so there's going to be feathering. Right now I think Andy has fixed it. I'm not sure. I need to come back and check that. We had the problem that when you place down a landmass, at that zoom level, the texture is generated, which means that if I zoom in, as you can see, the texture gets just a terrible mess, but it should be a proper texture. So we might need to redraw the texture whenever you zoom, because we cannot just say at the moment that the landmass is getting created, this is the texture.
Right.
Also, if you notice, if you look at the line art, this is not finished. Again, this is what Andy is working on, and he's going to work with Keora on the details. But the line is never changing its thickness. It's always at 4 pixels. I think there's a threshold somewhere when it starts to get bigger. Nope, it's fine. It's always the same line width, which again needs tweaking, because at that level it looks stupid. It's a bit heavy. But that, again, that is fine-tuning. We need to find, and that's why we have Keora and his perfect eye for such things, where he says, okay, we need to adjust that. If you are at 10,000 kilometers, reduce the line width by, I don't know, 1 pixel or 2 pixels. Yeah.
Some interesting questions coming through. I'm just double checking. Before we go to those questions, I've got 2 things lined up next, and then I'll come to your questions, I promise. So how do you prioritize what's next?
In general,
there's obviously lots of things now that you
can
do.
So in general, right now we prioritize just by what is alpha 1 material and what needs to be in alpha 1. All of that needs, and Andy already said there are going to be code bits and pieces that are going to be worked in just for alpha 1, and then we will rewrite them. But we want to have a clean, proper, usable, hopefully not crashing too often alpha 1. That is just making people happy. Apart from that, in general, we prioritize. I can't say the word. Can you say it for me?
Prioritize.
We prioritize things in our board meetings where we sit together, and our sprint meetings where we sit together and we find synergies. So if we say, okay, I'm just working on the landmasses, now would be a really good idea to also work on this because it's in the same area of code where we're working on, then it makes sense. There is the general roadmap where we know, okay, we want to have between alpha 1 and alpha 2, we want to release one update where you can draw rivers, paths, text, and brushes, right? So we take them and we say, okay, what's next? Well, brushes are easy to do because they are very close to what our prop tool already does. So let's start with that. Then go to paths, because we can use paths and rivers in the same mechanic. And then text is always complicated because you need to render the text, which isn't that easy. And that's how we move along with those things.
There we go. All right, let's have a look. Let's jump to some questions quickly, because there have been a few that have come through, and I think it makes sense whilst you've got the screen behind you, so we can talk about it a little bit. Watcher2417 says, will there already be layers in Alpha 1, and will there be a random generator for land masses?
So there will be a random generator for land masses at launch, not Alpha 1. There will be layers in there because our system already needs to understand each landmass on a specific layer. And a layer, again, a landmass is a parent layer that then inherits all the assets that are on that layer. To what extent the layer system will be, because we want you to give options like to add new layers. And I know that layer sorting is already fixed, that is already working. So my answer would be yes, but there will be more advanced layer options later down.
Paleo Pimp says, if you edit a region in the global map, then when creating a smaller region map, will it have those larger scale themes already loaded onto it, and vice versa?
I think what you might still think about is that you need two different maps. All you need to do is, if you want to create the region map for that, is you go into that region, create that map, and then export that specific region. So you're working on the full scale, but on export, you decide what part of the world would you like to use to create an image.
So it's almost ring fence. I want this area, export, and then it will export that area. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Lovely. Then Shadow Rodney says, is the size of the world always the same, or could you vary it for small planets or super big planets?
So for Alpha 1, it's going to, because we just want to stress test. We want to know when does it break, when you put 1 trillion assets onto the map, when will it give up? And how is your system performing in comparison to the test systems that we have? Later down the road, which means probably already Alpha 2, you will have on the launch screen, like when you create a new map, you have parameters to adjust the size. Like, for example, is it a ring world? Is it a disk world? Is it a spherical world? And what diameter has this world? You will be able to set that up yourself.
Another question from Paleo Pimp related to labeling scales borders. Are you looking towards using similar methods to GIS-based programs?
Yes. Yes, basically what we are using is a GIS data model already.
There we go. Watcher2417 says, can I use other symbols as a city symbol? For example, dwarves who live in a mountain, or elves who live in a huge tree?
First of all, if you like, Keora is creating, I think, about 4,000 assets at the moment. So when we launch, there will be a huge list of assets in there. If you're missing dwarves who live in mountains, you can definitely upload them and use them yourself. Like, you can use custom uploaded assets. So I think the answer is yes. You could even try to take a dwarf and combine it with a tree, group that, and use that as a reference, which would still work in DEIOS. Depending on how, again, that is just from the top of my head, depending how detailed our brush tool is, you might be even capable of drawing that in directly on the map. It's not a drawing tool like Photoshop, so it's not going to be optimized for that. But I have been drawing things in Dungeon Fog with a brush, so yeah, you can definitely do that.
Spock asks, if you make a very large city, when you zoom out, would it only appear as a city icon, or would you be able to see the actual city that you've built only zoomed out? So
Okay, I got it. That is still a heated discussion here at the company. For now, for now means probably until launch. We will revisit that idea later down the road, but we don't want to pile up things that we want to do. We should focus on things that we can do within the given time. For now, if you zoom out, so city maps are separated maps from world maps. So if you want to create a city, you create a new map and you will draw the city in there. We will hopefully give you some tools like a blueprint or a background that shows you the coastline of the area where you're trying to create the city. But it's not that you create the city on top of this region, and then you zoom out and still see the roads and the marketplace, and it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. It's one representational landmark that is placed there that says, this is my city, and it has a little pin that says, this is connected to a different map. Click on the city map, and then we will load up the city map for you.
I think those are some of those emergent questions where you go, well, yes, the city is 1,000 kilometers long because we're building Coruscant, for example. Are we just going to, yeah. So I get you. Damien the DM and Kevin on YouTube have been having a long discussion about VTT and the use of this. So we know there is map display and token use, let's call it VTT Lite in Dungeon Fog. Will that be the same here?
Yes. So the idea is that you can, very similar, hopefully a little bit more refined than it is in Dungeon Fog right now, but very similar to what you have in Dungeon Fog. You have a player's view and a game master's view, where you as the game master see the full map, and the player only sees what he has revealed or what he has explored or what you as the game master would like to show him. So there is going to be a viewer for DEIOS as well.
Okay. All right. So hopefully, well, we'll get there. We'll get there. People are saying my level's low. Some people are saying my level's high. I don't know. Anyway, that's all the questions we have thus far. I think Watcher2417 asked a question about mega cities and symbols. It's basically a repeat. So we have addressed that. And I don't think anything else is coming up just at the moment. So, Till, shall we turn our focus to Dungeon Fog a little bit?
Yes. Should I leave the screen?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get you coming back to full screen. There we go. Okay, so yeah, there's some systems that have been put into place in Dungeon Fog recently. Are they up and running, and what are they?
Are you talking about the template system?
Yes.
Okay.
The template system is the new one. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So the template system is hitting test servers. So the refined one, you've been already playing around with the template system because you are making templates for us. But the new refined version is hitting the test servers tomorrow. And if everything works as expected, we are going to release the template system next week, because although you and I will still be working on templates, we've already implemented the user templates, which means that every user can create their own templates. And I think it doesn't make sense to wait until you and I have finished our vast library of templates to give that tool to the users already. So we've decided to basically turn this around and say, okay, we're releasing the template system with the capability for users to create their templates. And then we will continuously build with you the great GM templates that you can then share with the community. So knock on wood, but again, it's hitting test servers tomorrow. And if that is still the case, then we will most likely release it next week.
There we go. That's excited. So I think that, yeah, we identified, I think, nearly 30 template maps just off the cuff. In a meeting, we were like, well, how many different maps can there be? Well, actually, there can be upwards of 30, which I think is a huge amount. And you know, these templates, they've been designed to be easy, so that if you need a tavern, or if you need a roadside, or if you need a, I don't know, mountain cliff
forest,
forest, you can just quickly go templates and then load up the forest and then work with it as you so choose. Okay, that's super cool. I think that's as you say, hopefully next week we'll get some feedback on the test servers as well, and see what people think. Okay. I'm busy looking at some of the templates. We don't have a fixed size for those, because I've been building some that are gigantic and some that are quite small and intimate. But there isn't a fixed sort of limitation.
No, well, I mean, we could sit together and talk about that, because from experience, we know that computers who probably have just an onboard graphics card, they suffer from having gigantic maps, because Dungeon Fog at the moment is still browser-based, which means that you at least should have something between 4 or 8 of gigabyte RAM, or you should have a graphics card and graphics acceleration. So if we're talking about 80 by 80 maps, they will most likely kill most systems. But if we're talking about, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 by 50, that's absolutely fine.
Just busy checking now. The biggest map I've made so far is 38 by 35. So yes, I'm still in there. Yeah. So to give you guys an idea of the power that these templates have, is they bring in a whole bunch of metadata as well. So the rooms are labeled, so you can see all of that kind of stuff happening too. Okay, so that's templates. That's super exciting. Is there another map pack coming out recently? We had cliffs and terrain.
So the next map pack, while we were chatting, I received the message from Thomas that it's already on the server. I just need to label them and give them the right dimensions. So I will visit the final brush up for the map pack tomorrow, which means on Thursday they will be released. And it is going to be, I can do something. I could do an announcement here. Ancient Greek, and they're beautiful. They are absolutely cool. We have dead hoplites lying around. We have broken columns. We have a temple. We have the Spartan helmet and the round shield with the spear, and we have sunken statues. It's fantastic. But I need to build a map first, and that's going to take place tomorrow, and then I will release it on Thursday.
Yeah, so that template that I made called the Temple of the Goddess, I'm going to delete and build a new one now, because we have more. So there we are. That's super cool. Watcher 2417, lots of questions coming through, which is brilliant, and we've got some new ones as well. Let's jump to those quickly. Was there anything else on Dungeon Fog before we go to questions?
There is a little bit. I don't want to spoil it yet. But in related to the masterclass that we're going to talk about later, there is something that Keora and I are currently working on that is Dungeon Fog related and masterclass related, and it is going to be announced hopefully on Thursday.
Okay, well, that's tempting. Watch Thursday. Let's wait for Thursday. Now my Wednesday's just got longer. Anyway, all right, so Watcher 2417's, I'm going to save his question for a little bit later on. Silver Dragon 56 says, I just pre-ordered Project DEIOS. Do I need to get Dungeon Maker, Battle Map Maker, or will that be part of the final product?
No, so it will be implemented, I think, before we go into closed beta, or when we go into closed beta, then the battle map tool will be implemented there. If you want to play around with it right now, you could get an on-demand code for it. Just buy an on-demand code in the shop, or take a subscription. But at the end of DEIOS, so when it is launched, the battle map editor is included.
There we go. Ben Nicholson asks, are all the maps fantasy D&D type maps in the template system?
Right now, so wait, it's not really a yes and it's not really a no, because there are a lot of terrain, let's call them terrain templates, which are system agnostic, because a forest is a forest. We do have a focus on fantasy, so it's heavy weighted toward fantasy, but there are definitely terrain maps that are usable for every system.
But watch this space, because Till is currently playing in a sci-fi game with me, and sometimes, you know,
Yeah.
when you've got the boss playing in a sci-fi game, suddenly sci-fi assets start popping up. Anyway, so who knows, Ben? But yes, I agree. I mean, sure, the road maps might not be usable because it's a cobbled road rather than a highway, for example. But certainly you can get there. And I mean, the fact that you can make your own templates and load them up and save them means that you can make generic highway number 5 and then populate it as you need to.
And keep in mind, the templates that Guy is now building, those are great GM templates. But with the system released, you can take every map you like, even clone it from other users, and define it as a template for yourself, so that the idea behind the template is that you don't have to build all the maps from scratch. You say something like, I'm always working with a forest map. So I'm creating a forest map. I make this a template, and whenever I make iterations of that forest map, I can just use the forest template and then start tweaking around with it. So you could take cyberpunk body shop as a template, and then make it I don't know, make it a hacker retreat, or make it a weapons shop, or make it a car shop, whatever you like. You just take the layout and make it a template, and then you don't have to rebuild all of that for every map, but you just start from the template that you've created. And the user templates will be released probably before we release the great GM templates in as a package.
There you go. You heard it here first. So, okay. Shadow Rodney's got one last question here. I'm looking to build the worlds for my fantasy. I'm looking to build the worlds for my books. Will there be a way to capture parts of your world to illustrate? Well, you'll be able to export your world, wouldn't you? I mean,
well, yeah, definitely. You can export the world. Also, because Keora is creating all of the assets, and if you're interested in that, rewatch the I think the last or the previous, so one of the last Mapping It Out, where I showed that Keora assets are split between the line art layers and the color layers. So we can also utilize that to give you just the line art. So you could have a black and white version of the map as well.
Ah, that's really a good point. Really good point. Some more wonderful questions coming through. Can we overrun a little bit, Till?
I was expecting that we're overrunning.
Good. Okay. So, Cow Power says, I love the name. Would you be able to change a template with a click? For example, I make a world filled with dirt roads, and then later I decide that they should be paved. Can I just change the already laid down roads with a few clicks?
Yes. So first of all, you have a little management system where you can manage your templates, obviously. And second, templates are, if I'm not completely wrong, I apologize if I'm saying it wrong, but the last thing I remember was that user templates are just a reference to the map, which means that if you change the original map, the template would be affected. So you could just go back to the map and say, okay, I want to change the pathway into stone road. This would mean that the template then would adapt to that change. Every map that is created out of that template is an instance on itself. So you don't affect all the maps that were based on the template, you just affect the template.
There we go. And so, yes, absolutely. You literally just select a different texture. It would be what? One 2-3 clicks, and then you'd be done. I think we should probably do some videos on how we can really utilize the power of these templates, because
Yes.
as you were saying, there was another question which related to that, and it came from Damien the DM. Could the templates open the door for importing maps or parts of maps into another? So I make a template of a really cool reception
I don't think
room,
so.
and then
I don't think so. I would have to wrap my brain around that question to answer it properly. But what you are looking for would be taking a room, copying it, and pasting it into another map, or taking a selection. And again, this is not what, like, the system of Dungeon Fork as it is built right now is not capable of doing that. This is one of the big changes that we're going to introduce when we build the battle map editor, or rebuild the battle map editor back in DEIOS, because then multi-select will be a thing, and copy paste, it will be one software, so copy pasting from one map into the other will be a lot easier than using it from one browser, closing the window, keeping that somewhere in a local database, opening up a new browser. So it's a lot more complicated right now. And it will make our lives much easier if we're talking about software here.
There we
Desktop
go.
software.
Let me just see if there's anything more related to that. Does Project DEIOS, the program for Windows, use the World Anvil API, or does World Anvil use the Programs API?
So it's going to be two ways. It has to be two ways, because if you're working in World Anvil and you want to import something from Project DEIOS, you want to tap into the Programs API. And the other way around, apparently, if you're working on your world and you want to have an article at your hand, then you want to tap into World Anvil API. So what Dimi and I have agreed on is that at one specific point, I think it will be around Alpha 2, we will sit down and talk about the best way to build this API, so we can both benefit from the way that it is working. Andy and Dimi already had a rough line out talk at the Spiel last year, and they have a pretty good understanding of the expectations. But let's call it the documentation of that API and the requirement list is not written, and this does not make sense to start yet unless we are at a point where you can see what is in DEIOS and you can see what is in World Anvil, and you can understand how to bring that together.
There you go. There you go. I think that's all the questions except for the last one. Someone was asking, how many people are signed up to the Circle of World Builders? Can you check that quickly?
Yes, I can.
Because I suppose you can as well, but I'm useless at
I'm
technology.
I'm a freak guy. I can tell you already, you will have to wear a wig.
No. So what if you don't know what we're talking about? If you don't know what we're talking about, we're talking about this. No, we're talking about that. The masterclass for Game Masters, Circle of World Builders, and it's happening this weekend. It's nuts. It's terrifying. It's amazing. It's 16 hours of just super cool stuff going on. If you haven't yet signed up, circleofworldbuilders.com. Jot your email in there. It gets you to sign up for the whole thing. And it's Dungeon Fog, it's Great GM, it's World Anvil, it's Chaos. We're all coming together. We're giving you as much as we can in terms of helping you to create an awesome adventure space, a region space, all that kind of cool stuff. And there was, I don't even know who caused it to happen. I know it was someone. I think it was actually in the show.
I think it was probably Dimi and Kiara.
Yeah.
Because they were.
That's
and
right.
I think, so correct me if I'm wrong, but the challenge was, if we have more than 2,000 subscribers to the newsletter or to the masterclass submission system, because if you have the newsletter, you can submit your work and we'll review it. If there are more than 2,000 subscribers, Dimmy will shave his head. Kiara will dye his hair blue. You remind me, but I think you're wearing a terrible wig.
It's an awful red wig pretending to be the mother of a character that Janet played on a live D&D stream last year for a whole stream.
And I am going to dress up as Bob Ross because I wanted to shoot a video with Kiora where he teaches Bob Ross how to draw battle maps or region maps, how to draw maps in general. So I said this is the perfect opportunity. So on Sunday I will dress up as Bob Ross while Kiora is with me in the workshop, and he will have to explain all his brilliant ideas directly to Bob Ross.
Anyway, so that was only if we reached 2,000 people. We were at 300 last week, Wednesday.
Yeah. Do you want to hear the count?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's definitely on. The contest is met. We're at 2,043 people.
Wow. I mean, 43, I think I'm going to ask for a recount. I mean, you have no idea. That wig is awful. And how do we know it's not the same people signing up 43 times? I mean, it's definitely. And you've been in Russia or dealing with Russians recently, haven't you? So I think it's,
yeah. It's all, everything's against you. I'm sorry. I can see the numbers here. It's no chance.
Oh dear. All right. Well, don't split wig hairs, says T-Cats. Embrace the wig, says Botisaurus. Yeah, I'm coming to Vienna for a little visit. Okay, so that's going to be great. Kevin says happy little dragons painted everywhere. Damien says at least yours isn't permanent. Yeah, that's true. That is true. Okay, Till, I think we've got to the end of quite a roller coaster of a month.
Yes. Thank you all for your questions. And again, thank you all for understanding that Alpha 1 is delayed. We're doing our best to finish it as soon as possible. And I will keep you updated here. I will keep you updated on Discord. I will keep you updated on Kickstarter. So whenever we have something new, I will post it to you. You will see it. And hopefully, next Mapping It Out will be about either reviewing the alpha together or announcing the release date.
There we go. Absolutely. Till, thanks for being with us and being so honest and open about everything. And yes, thank you all for tuning in, joining us, adding your comments and questions. I think it's awful. I think it's awful that you ask questions. It's awesome that you ask these questions.
Yes, it is awesome.
And until next month, we wish you all the happiest of map making.
Bye.